I'm here today to mourn the death of Rooster Teeth, a media company that made some of the funniest, most interesting, and most entertaining shows that I have ever seen. And today, after 21 years, they've shut their doors. For good.
I'm obviously the best camper here. Is it always just adventures with you two? I'm the most rambunctious.
That looks sick as f***, dude.
In 2017, I was scrolling on Twitter, absent-mindedly, and at some point I came across a trailer of a show called Camp, and I was immediately hooked.
The colourful, bouncy animation, the fast pace of the trailer, the variety in the situations. And to add to that, summer was right around the corner, and I had nothing to do. I didn't even bother going to YouTube. I immediately went onto a sketchy website with pirated cartoons. For some reason, all these episodes were in this compressed, crappy quality to the point where I could barely watch it. With Kiss cartoons not being an option, I picked up a shovel and did some digging. I digged, and digged, and digged, and it was on YouTube. For free. Huh? This was the first time I had ever seen a full show, nay, a full animated show, released onto the internet like it had. Sure, there were web shows before like Eddsworld, Homestar Runner, and Happy Tree Friends, but those either had massive gaps between uploads, were shorter than most TV shows, or just weren't up to par in quality. That's obviously a lot to ask from small creators, and this isn't me throwing shade at them. My point is, this was weird to me. So I watched the first episode, Escape from Camp Campbell. I loved it. Then the second, loved it some more. Then the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, don't even get me started on the 12th, that season finale was something. And then, finally, season 2 came around. And my summers were never going to be the same from that point on. Every week on Friday, I'd either get home from school or get interrupted from my game of Team Fortress 2 by a new episode of Camp. A new 12-minute adventure starring Max, Neil, Nikki, David, and Gwen, where they get up to some crazy misadventures in a summer camp. I'm not going to review Camp here, nor a few other shows like Red vs. Blue, Ruby, or even stuff like Day 5 and Crunch Time, because I'd love to make those their own videos. But just know that Camp was not only my introduction to Rooster Teeth, but was also one of my favourite shows to come out of the studio. Hell, I barely watched anything else for the rest of my summer aside from YouTube. Not even other Rooster Teeth shows, aside from 1 or 2 peeks at Ruby Chibi and the RT podcast. You know, to make the most out of my first subscription. I was sleeping on their other shows though, because around the end of the year, my friend and I got talking about Rooster Teeth, and he started talking about one of his favourites.
Hey. Yeah? You ever wonder why we're here?
Red vs. Blue was Rooster Teeth's first show, and man is it something. I didn't think that at first though. I thought the pacing was a bit too slow, and the story felt like it was trying to find a reason to exist in the first place. But after a rewatch, I think it's pretty good for what it is, especially at the time it was made. Bernie and the guys took something that to many others didn't have any use outside of its original intent of being a video game, and made it into something so much more, which for a very first show is an amazing idea. Taking something used for one purpose and then using it for another entirely. After finishing the Blood Gulch Chronicles for the first time, I felt like it was a good show so far, but as a sitcom it was fairly standard. It had some good jokes, a funny storyline, and some great character moments, but there was nowhere near enough substance for the 10 more seasons that had come out after it if it were going to continue like this. Luckily, it didn't. Season 6 of Red vs. Blue to this day is still one of my favorite shows ever released. I don't give a fuck fuck if it's machinimated. Red vs. Blue Reconstruction kicks down the door to Blood Gulch's room, tackles RVB into a headlock, and injects morphine into its bloodstream. The story goes from two factions fighting in an empty canyon to a desperate race to track down AI units lest an all-powerful monster gets them first and uses them for evil. And then we meet back up with Caboose and Griff and Simmons and Sarge and Tucker, and the writing is great and the voice acting is even better, and oh my god. Listen, if you were bored by Blood Gulch, that's fair. It is not for everyone, but it is worth it to get to season 6. I watched season 7 right after 6, and it's just as good. Same with season 8. They flipped the script a bit, having Washington be on the other side of the fight, but it was more of the same good writing. And then they had a scene like this.
Wait, what are you up to? What is that noise? Do I hear a... car?
And suddenly, the show would never be the same again. Season 9, Season 10, the Chorus Trilogy, not 14, Season 15, I blazed through this show after Recollection got me hooked. And then it ended. Season 15, Episode 21, Epilogues, was the latest episode they had released at that time. And once again, I was left with nothing to watch. All alone, bored. Oh, wait, no. Over the next 2 years, I also started watching Ruby, Day 5, On the Spot, RTAA, 10 Little Roosters, Nomad of Nowhere, Always Open, Ruby Chibi, Achievement Hunter, RT Life, $1 Million Butt, Genlock, Immersion, X-Ray and Vav, The No, Sex Swing. Wait, what the fuck is Sex Swing? I completely forgot that this show existed. Kinda wish I didn't remember, to be honest. There was so much stuff on Rooster Teeth that I didn't need another streaming service. I could have watched their shows exclusively and not had a problem. Scratch that, I did watch their shows exclusively for months and never felt like I was missing out. Camp Camp even had an 18-episode season. No shows get 18 episodes anymore. One of the coolest things they did in 2018 was Pilot Month, where they aired 5 new pilots for new shows. Branded, Gork's Quest, Achievement Haunter, $1 Million Butt Animated, and Murder Room. I don't remember much about Branded, and $1 Million Butt Animated was $1 Million but animated. Crazy concept, I know. But Gork's Quest, Murder Room, and Achievement Haunter were all really fun and got full seasons down the line. Well, okay, Gork's Quest got 4 more episodes, but still, it was a really cool experiment. One that, in today's indie-fueled creative scene, I think should happen again. In my eyes, Rooster Teeth was going strong. Their animated shows were exploding in popularity, their live shows were equally as funny or intriguing, and their podcasts fueled my bus trips to college. I loved Rooster Teeth. I loved them so much that I wanted to work there. I wanted to finish college, apply for an apprenticeship or some other role in writing, and fly to Texas to work with some of the most interesting, kind, and creative professionals that I had ever seen in the industry. It was 2019, and I wanted to be just like them.
"2020 sucked for a lot of reasons. A virus went round killing millions of people. Everybody was stuck indoors all day for months at a time. I still had college, but it became a joke. So, big shocker, 2020 sucked. But 2020 didn't just ruin my school life or my social life, but it took a massive toll on one of my favorite studios as well.
Rooster Teeth was pretty quiet this year, which is understandable considering everything that was going on around them. But the shows they could still make in their makeshift office rooms at home didn't have the same pizzazz that they had before. The Rooster Teeth podcast still aired every week, but the energy wasn't there as much. On the Spot continued as well, but without the host and contestants being in the same room, it wasn't as fun or as entertaining as previous seasons. But that's fine, because summer is right around the corner, and with a new summer comes Camp Camp Season 5! No Camp Camp this year? No, that's okay. We're in weird times. I'm sure that next year Camp Camp Season 5 will... Nah. It wasn't just no Camp. In 2021, there was no new on the spot, there was still no news of Nomad of Nowhere Season 2, and Red vs. Blue returned, but it was not Red vs. Blue. The output they had in 2019 was gone. Barely anything released in 2020 once the virus was in full swing. And that lack of output continued into 2021. It wasn't just their output that died though, their views suffered as well. Looking back at the Rooster Teeth channel when lockdown went into effect, their views dropped substantially. The only shows that still got consistent views was Rooster Teeth Animated Adventures and, Rooster Teeth Animated Adventures. For a channel with over 9 million subscribers, getting only 50,000 views for a podcast that you usually get hundreds of thousands of views on probably isn't the best sign. And yeah, I stopped watching Rooster Teeth consistently around this time too. I mean, why would I? None of the shows I loved were being made anymore, the interest I had in the podcast was killed off during the pandemic, and in general, Rooster Teeth just became a lot less compelling. Not just from their content, or lack thereof, but for all of the controversies they had gotten themselves into as well.
If you watched my current state of animation video, you already know about 2 of these controversies. And while it may be a little wrong to kick Rooster Teeth while they're down, I need to talk about this. Because if I'm going to say goodbye to Rooster Teeth, I need to talk about the people. And if I'm going to say goodbye to Rooster Teeth, I need to tell them how they hurt me. And how they hurt us, the community. And most importantly, how they hurt them.
In June of 2019, many of Rooster Teeth's current and ex-animation staff flocked to Glassdoor.com to complain about crunch culture and the terrible workplace environment at the company. While this was specifically about the animation side, dozens of ex-staff would end up saying their piece about their experiences at Rooster Teeth as well. I swear, there's a video somewhere from an ex-employee saying they left because the stress of working there caused them to develop a skin condition. In April of 2018, Achievement Hunter host Mika Burton left the company, largely because of the racism and sexism she received from the audience. But it wasn't until 2020 when we found out how bad it was behind the scenes, because a lot of the hate she received was sadly internal at the company. We don't know much about specific events that happened, but considering she wrote, and I quote, "Seeing the N-word written on a whiteboard wasn't even close to my worst experience there," I think that says enough. And finally, the big one I covered in my previous video, Kaden Jensen. In October 2022, Kaden Jensen came out about most of her negative experiences she went through at Rooster Teeth. She was constantly pressured to crunch and work extra long hours on projects, she wasn't paid for her work fairly and went unpaid for most of her early contract work, and the real nail in the coffin? She was referred to as Fugs, a homophobic nickname, every time someone on camera mentioned her. In a public video that they made money on. That's another reason I stopped watching Rooster Teeth. I couldn't, in good conscience, watch some of these videos knowing that people were working 7 AM to 11 PM most days while being treated like shit the entire time. Not just from the executives and heads, but their co-workers. I honestly doubt that Kaden and Mika were the only 2 people in the building who were treated this poorly.
But Rooster Teeth marched on. Their views dwindling, their reputation down the toilet. The question is, what would they do for their 20th anniversary?
2023 was a weird year for Rooster Teeth. For one, they changed their logo. I gotta say this now, or I'll forever hold my peace or some crap, but I actually really like this redesign. It's not as good as the original logo, but I love how they incorporated a rooster look to the R. And while the font is the bubbly, safe look that a lot of redesigns go with, I actually think it looks kind of funky. Good funky. It's not like the previous font they used was any more or less creative. For 2, they actually had a small resurgence in popularity. For the first time since 2019, people were talking about Rooster Teeth not in a negative light, but in a positive and optimistic one. Not for the logo, people hated the logo. For their 20th anniversary, Rooster Teeth was bringing new episodes of old shows or projects. $1 Million But, Let's Play, Artie Doc's Immersion on the Spot Camp! All things considered, this was a really cool and kind of a sweet idea, and it made a lot of Rooster Teeth fans like myself check out what new episodes were dropping every week. That On the Spot episode was f***ing amazing. One of the best in the show's history, using a retro future aesthetic that led to some really funny bits.
I think we need a team name. Okay. Do you have a team name?
Yeah, we're the Sacred Harmony Injunction Team. It's our top secret name. Wait. We should have seen this coming with time travelers.
The $1 Million Butt episode was also great. That's it. That's really all I have to say about it. You know, I liked it. It was good. I liked it. The Camp episode. Save it for the Camp video. Save it for the Camp video. Save it for the... Around the end of the 20th anniversary series, a few big announcements were made at that year's RTX. On the Spot was coming back for new episodes, Camp was coming back for new episodes, and what made me most excited was that Bernie Burns was coming back to make one last season, the final season of Red vs. Blue. The rest of 2023 got a bit quieter after the 20th anniversary videos ended, and it stayed that way leading into 2024. And that's when it happened. On the 6th of March 2024, Rooster Teeth officially announced that they would be closing their doors for good. And man. I mean, I guess I knew it was coming. Their channel's views hadn't been good for 3 years, and they made so much less than they did back in 2019. Their animation division was practically non-existent at this point. Even Red vs. Blue, the show that made them as big as they are today and that they milked so long that the cow was reduced to dust, hadn't had a new season since 2021. Many fan-favorite live shows like On the Spot, Immersion, and $1 Million Butt hadn't had a new full season run for years. And to top it all off, for the past 5 years, Rooster Teeth had been in some sort of controversy every single year. Even 7 months earlier in 2023, when some dickhead decided that it would be a good idea to remove Red vs. Blue, Camp, Ruby, and other animated shows off their YouTube channel, forcing you to go to their website if you wanted to watch these shows. Their reputation wasn't in the gutter, it was in the gulag, feasting on crumbs of sourdough bread and RVB merch. And it's at this point where I have to talk about how I felt 2 months ago and how I feel about it now. When the news hit, I was not surprised, to be honest. But I was also sad. I was angry at Warner Media. I was worried about how these Rooster Teeth productions would be preserved, if at all. And most of all, I was scared for the employees at Rooster Teeth. As much as I love what they made, who made those shows was always more important to the identity of Rooster Teeth. 2 days later, those feelings were hammered in even more when members of Rooster Teeth came together to talk about their closure. I've watched the VOD about 4 times now, and every single time I end up crying with Jeff and Barbara and Kerry and everyone else. People who clearly cared so damn much about their work and their creations that they would openly sob about something they cared so much about ending. It hit extra hard after I rewatched the 2018 documentary Why We're Here, 15 Years of Rooster Teeth. Nearing the end of the documentary, many current members of RT at the time were talking about how they found Rooster Teeth in the first place, why they wanted to work there, how amazing it was that they got the job that they had. Each person had their own story that just made my heart glow and put a big stupid smile on my face. Watching those same people come face to face with the fact that the job they loved so much is over gives me the exact opposite feeling. It's draining. There is forever a part of my, and I'm sure many of their now ex-staff members' hearts and souls, where Rooster Teeth once resided. That studio inspired Satterline. Their shows inspired my show. Their people made me smile and laugh and helped me through so many of my toughest times. Whether I like it or not, Rooster Teeth is forever going to be a part of me now. And now that it's gone, there's going to be a part of me missing for the rest of my life. That sounds a bit dramatic, but that's how I feel.
I think, as we sit here mourning the loss of our beloved Rooster Teeth, maybe we should reflect on why this happened in the first place, lest history repeats itself. And one of the biggest and most obvious things that led to Rooster Teeth's downfall was much like many others. they got bought out.
In 2014, Fullscreen, a subsidiary of Mondo Media, who themselves were a subsidiary of Warner Bros. Discovery, acquired Rooster Teeth. To many within the company, this was a dark day for RT, and would end up being their reckoning. Many bad decisions made for Rooster Teeth's sake was probably made by the higher-ups at Warner. For example, removing some of your most watched and most beloved shows from YouTube, like Camp Camp, or Ruby, or the show that started the f***ing company. But to pin the blame on just Warner would be childish, because Rooster Teeth didn't just thrive based on the things they made, but the people who made them and the community they interacted with. Big surprise that you're going to lose boatloads of respect when people discover that you've been abusing your employees left and right and not stepping in to fix issues when they're brought up. It's kind of hard to watch an episode of Nomad of Nowhere when you know the creator of the show was shunted out of the roles he deserved to be in and was treated like shit behind the scenes. I think it says something when many ex-employees who at once seemed so passionate about their job at Rooster Teeth and were honored to get that job in the first place, practically rolled their eyes at the company's closure, calling it bittersweet. I could go on and on and on and on for hours about every little thing Rooster Teeth did wrong. But I want to talk about something a little more important instead. Rooster Teeth wouldn't be what it was without the people that made it. So if I'm going to say goodbye to Rooster Teeth, I really need to talk about the people. And I'm not just talking about the founders, though Bernie, Matt, Jeff, and Gus all deserve massive props for making such an incredible studio that gave hundreds of people jobs and millions of people something to watch. But I also want to thank some of my personal inspirations and favorites from Rooster Teeth, the first of which being Miles Luna. Miles, alongside Jordan Swears, created Camp Camp, which again is the whole reason that I know Rooster Teeth existed in the first place. And while I don't love Camp Camp anywhere near as much as I did back in high school, I would be outright lying if I said the show didn't inspire me to create my show stickers, because it did. Not only was he a creator of Camp Camp, but he made some amazing characters and wrote some of my personal favorite episodes from the show. He was the voice behind a lot of the commentary tracks on the Blu-ray, he made some of the best seasons of Red vs. Blue, and whenever he was on screen, he had an energy to him that you couldn't help but be into. I know he hasn't worked for Rooster Teeth for years, but he was still a massive part of it. So, thank you, Miles. And it would feel wrong of me to mention Miles without also mentioning Kerry Shawcross. He wrote some of the edgier, weirder episodes on Camp Camp while also having an addictive personality. He wasn't on camera that often, but whenever he was, it was a sight to behold. And his passion for his job really shows whenever he's on screen or behind the scenes. And for that, I thank you, Kerry. And to round out the Camp Camp team, I gotta quickly shout out Richie Branson for doing the full credit soundtracks for seasons 2 to 5. Yisa Badiola for leading the animation and generally being a bubbly personality who was great every time she was given a mic, and the entire voice cast for doing a stellar job giving these drawings life. I'm gonna be honest, I'm bringing him up here purely because of On the Spot, but god damn it, John Reisinger quickly became one of my favorites at RT. I'm gonna sound like a broken record in this section, but he oozes an energy you've just got to love. He was a great host, he had some hilarious stories on the RT podcast, and he gave his all into every project he was on. Love you, John. And love you, Broadcast. Barbara Dunkelman is an obvious name I need to bring up. She was a powerhouse in the RT community. A fantastic personality who, after appearing on camera once, didn't stop, and I couldn't be happier about that. She was a big member on the Rooster Teeth podcast, a voice actor for many characters behind their animations, and had, say it with me, an amazing energy every time she was in the room. And honestly, I could say the exact same thing about Gavin Free. He was in many of the early Rooster Teeth shorts, was also a prominent host on the RT podcast, and was in arguably 80% of everything else they made since joining in late 2008. This video is long enough as is, so I just want to quickly list off some people I loved without going into detail. Chris Demares, Blaine Gibson, Michael and Lindsay Jones, Armando Torres, the Best Friends Today gang that I really got into after learning of Rooster Teeth's closure, Jack Patillo, Griff Milton, Matt Bragg, Cole Gallion, Shannon McCormick, Ellie Main, and a special mention of Gus Arola and Jeff Ramsey, the former for sticking close to the company's main content, and the latter for speaking to the audience on so many occasions when things went wrong. And I think that's it for now.
I want to continue. I probably should continue. But I don't want to make this a feature-length film, and I'll still have plenty of opportunities to talk about Rooster Teeth shows, productions, and staff in later videos, so yeah, I think this is it. As far as Rooster Teeth's concerned, this is goodbye. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me dozens and dozens of hours of entertainment, for being a break when I needed it most, and maybe most importantly, for inspiring me to create all the stuff that I make. Because without you, I might not be making this video. And I don't want it to end. And despite the last 4 years, I really don't want you to go. Because I'm never going to get to experience the same experiences that I had because of you ever again. I'm never going to go to an RTX because I never had the chance to go to one before. I'm never going to get to experience a new episode of On the Spot live ever again and broadcast silly antics beforehand. And my summers are never going to be the same again.
Hey, yeah? You ever wonder why we're here? It's one of life's great mysteries, isn't it?
Hey everyone, leaving this as a final thoughts before ending off the episode. I'm recording this a few hours before this video goes live, sometime in the AM in the UK, because it wouldn't be my show if it wasn't late by 5 days and wasn't uploaded at an ungodly time in the morning. Anyway, thank you for watching all the way through, if you did. Despite the subject matter, this was a very fun video to make. I got to watch a bunch of old Rooster Teeth videos that I hadn't seen in a long time, and even found a few new shows that I'll still have the chance to go back to if I ever wanted to. Special thanks to the wonderful folks at rtarchive.org, by the way. The majority of the footage I used was from that website. Not only was making this video fun, but it was actually a really good way to grieve. While the video was written and structured to feel like a funeral, it was mainly for dramatic effect, but in all seriousness, I do feel like I needed a mourning period. I mean, I still do a little bit. This was a company that I had followed for years and inspired basically most of the things I do, but making this video helped me exercise some of that grief. The weirdest thing for me to think about is, Rooster Teeth was made 3 months before I was even born. My entire life, without me realizing, that company was growing up alongside me. But hey, at least I'll probably outlive it. Unless, you know, something happens in the next 2 months. That would suck. If I die, give my dog all my Rooster Teeth Blu-rays. I'm sure she'll get a kick out of RVB Singularity. But in all seriousness, thank you, Rooster Teeth, and all the amazing people that worked there. From the good, you inspired me to create my show and this channel, and to strive to express myself creatively, no matter how weird what I wanted to create was. And while the bad parts of Rooster Teeth were obviously unintentional, I at least know what not to do when Satterline grows. Hopefully into something much different from you, for better or for worse. Okay, sorry, that's enough talking. Thank you all for watching this video, and as a final thought to leave you on, please go and support as many of the old Rooster Teeth crew in their new endeavours as you can. Thank you to Ion for the thumbnail art, and Tappy for the skit art. And thank you for watching. Goodbye, Rooster Teeth. I'll miss you.